Let's talk tourism.
Richard Bexon is a real estate investment consultant and star of the popular Investing in Costa Rica podcast. Did I get that right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. He's originally from England, married to Tika in his misspent youth, moved to Costa Rica, never looked back. He and I were business partners in tourism for over a decade, so Rich has unique perspective on both tourism and real estate. Richard, let's talk tourism.
Let's do it.
First question: has the real estate boom begun to fade?
I think it has, which is kind of, it was going to happen. I just think that we see a bit of a delay down here in Costa Rica, but I'm definitely seeing a softening in the market, price reductions. I think what's happening is that from areas like, major tourist areas where real estate was very hot, things kind of spilled over into neighboring areas,
Right.
like Potrero, like Avianas, Marbella, all these other areas. Now I'm seeing that contract back in to these main tourist areas. In those main tourist areas, prices are still pretty good, but there is certainly some softening, that's for sure.
And who do you think, when the dust settles, who are the winners and the losers, whether it's destinations or whatever?
Well, I think the winners are going to be you can see it, your Santa Teresa's and your Nasaras that just saw that huge, spike. I mean, my gut says that I don't know whether Santa Teresa in 10 years will be what it is today, and the demand will be for it in 10 years, just because I think, it's a very fashionable destination and fashion comes and goes. Whereas something like Nosara, I think may stay strong just because of the people that have moved in there. It's a lot of families, middle-aged, elder people where, with generational wealth. So I think that one will probably stay strong. Definitely another area. Ojochao has done very, very well out of it as well. And Uvita, beforehand it was Dominical. Uvita was kind of growing with some small boutique hotels, but has really taken off on the luxury home and vacation rental market. And that has kind of bled down to Ojochao and then bled further down to Tres Rios. But I think that, again, the coastal areas for sure case. I still think that there is, it's a gold mine in some of these mountainous areas where prices really haven't gone up. We're seeing stuff kind of in the Gracia tennis area starting to kind of, creep up a little bit. And a lot of people are still looking to relocate. I think the market's going to stay strong in some areas just because of families looking to relocate. A lot of people are just like, I've had enough. Like, I've made good money. I've had enough. Like, let me get out. And Costa Rica is one of the top places on the list.
I've talked about this over more than one beer, but it's still the riddle of the Sphinx. You have this unique knowledge between tourism and real estate. What is it that the real estate people don't get about tourism and vice versa?
I think the real estate people don't get is that you actually need some form of like anchor hotel in an area in order to bring guests because then people aren't just building in the middle of nowhere, meaning that like you need to have, God, I don't know. I'm sure that you could probably think of a million hotels here, Case, but
right?
Yeah, like the Tamarindo Diria. I mean, that was really the first big hotel in Tamarindo. And from that, things expanded. So you need that anchor hotel. And that's why, the Avianas is just getting stuff that flows out from Panilla, but there's nothing in Avianas. There's nothing really in Negra. I mean, there is Negra's, apply Negra Hotel, but I think you need something a little bit more luxurious and a couple of other boutique hotels in the area. Like, if I was to buy a huge wrath of beachfront land, Case, and develop something, it would have to have one or two, maybe even three hotels there. And I think that that's where something like a Mystical, which is south in Esterios area, just south of Playa Hermosa near Jaco, they're just trying to sell real estate and condos, whereas I think you need a hotel there. So there's this constant flow. I mean, you and I have spoken about it constantly, but...
It's funny as you say that, the image that comes to mind, if this were the Wild West, you need the train station. Because the train stations where the passengers are coming and going all the time. And that's the thing these big hotels provide, is this regular flow of energy and excitement and dollars, right? That never gets stale.
And then you need restaurants, and then you need bars and convenience stores. And then, then the real estate can kind of come. Like, you need to build that for the real estate to be there. So I think that that's what maybe the real estate doesn't understand, is that like in order to develop a destination, rather than just selling that piece of land, that's great, but you're not really developing a destination. And difficult to do when it's all decompartmentalized and people have their own interests, And I think from the tourism side is the opposite case, which is that like, look, hey, tourism guys, that people that own hotels, etc., like you've done the hard work, like develop the real estate, like people want to buy a piece of it. So create something for them, because they go to your hotel, they have this feeling and they want to live that feeling every single time that they come here, but they don't always want to stay in a hotel room.
Yeah. Yeah, there's absolutely no point in doing all that hard work and suffering all those years just to drive up the neighboring real estate nonprofit, right?
Oh, and I get why, a hotelier would probably not want to do it, Case, just because a lot of the time the infrastructure costs necessary to do it, of putting roads and underground, electricity and water, and like it gets out of their realm. Developing a hotel is one thing, but now you're a developer selling real estate, managing construction, but like there are multiple models to do this, and I know multiple different ones where I'm like, guys, you really don't need that much skin in the game.
Right. What's the most common misconception that you hear from potential clients about investing in Costa Rica? Like, what's the first myth you need to dispel? It's cheap. Besides, it's cheap. Right?
It's cheap. I access to capital, Case. Like I can get a loan or a mortgage. That's like usually a big one. I can exit my property really quickly. Again, because of the access to capital, basically loans, which Banco Lafise now is doing. I've got a couple of clients who have gone through Banco Lafise and got 65% loan to value loans, but they're paying 10.5%. But like that's going to dry up as well, man. We've seen this before back in 06, 07. That'll dry up as well. So I think that that's the big misconceptions. And also, Case, I don't know what it happens. And I think I've said it before. If just like people get a little drunk when they're in Costa Rica and just kind of throw their due diligence out the window. Like, you should have extra like sensitive spider senses in Costa Rica.
Yeah, you really don't want to go to the courts, right?
Yeah, or that like, hey guys, I hear that like XY beach, is going to take off in like 5 and 10 years and have paved roads. Like it probably isn't. Like we develop really slowly. Like if what it is now you could live with for the next 5 to 10 years, then that's fine. But like, don't believe the realtors, don't believe the hype. Like if you can live with how it is, that's how it is.
Right. Yeah, the good one's always Tom Brady's buying the next beach over. One of those ones.
Yeah, I mean, I had a friend come to me and be like, Rich, we should buy some stuff in the mountains because I heard that Tom Brady is buying up in the mountains. And I'm like, so what? Like, yeah.
More likely, Tom Brady's personal trainer's girlfriend bought a lot.
Right. Or like, hey, the Four Seasons bought stuff up by Rio Celeste. Like, we should be buying stuff up there in the mountains. And I'm like, look, I mean, how do you exit that quickly? I mean, that's a gamble. That's really is a gamble. It's like playing on roulette table.
Yeah. What trends are you seeing emerge? Anything interesting or new that's been happening, or where you see sort of trends moving?
Well, I'm seeing a trend of people buying boutique hotels, Case, that continues to be strong. My advice to them when buying boutique hotels is, do you know what you're getting yourself into? What I've tried to do is convert those boutique hotels with my clients and investors into more like vacation rentals, so you don't have to have all the staff, because as you and I know, having run and owned a hotel, that
that wasn't a nightmare. I thought it was just a nightmare that I was having.
I look at it as an MBA in hotel management, Case. An inventory control, and like there's all these moving parts. Like a hotel has so many moving parts. It's a complicated machine that needs a lot of love, a lot of attention. And it's just, whether it's 8 rooms or it's 20 or 40, it's exactly the same work.
Right. We should tattoo a few of those tenets onto our arms, just so we can never ever.
Don't do it again.
Yeah, no less than 25 rooms. 25 rooms or none.
I think that trend, Case, for sure. God, what other trends have I seen? Maybe, a lot of people are actually building kind of smaller homes. They're not building these massive, monstrous homes. It's kind of, I've seen a tendency towards more smaller, compact, more comfortable homes, especially as, we try to educate clients of like, look, you don't need a 4,000 square foot home. Like we spend most of our time outside, sunny, like inside is great for, midday, etc. But like, sunsets up in the morning, like, you want to be outside.
More to AC, more to paint, more to maintain.
Yeah. and a lot more investment in those areas, in those, outdoor ranchos, in the barbecue and social areas, and in outdoor dining and the pool itself. There's a lot more, where I think beforehand, a lot more attention was spent in like kitchens and bathrooms and bedrooms. Now it's all outside.
Sorry, I'm muting myself as my kids just came home. My dog's going nuts. Hey, are there any trends that you've seen? I mean, I know you're a big traveler, and when you get out and about and go back to Europe or over to other countries, are there any trends you're seeing elsewhere that you're encouraging or you're wishing more investors would pursue here?
Two, tiny homes, guys.
Yeah.
I'm going to do one up in the mountains. Like, there is none of that mountainous tiny home orientated stuff. It's a new trend, and Costa Rica's just stayed at the beaches, but there are a lot of locations here, beautiful locations with, stunning views, amazing climates. I mean, people don't understand is how many microclimates Costa Rica has. Drive 30 minutes, temperature changes. So that's definitely one of them. And another one I'd love to see, Case, is just more agricultural tourism. You and I have spoken about it for a while, in the areas like Italy and France and Spain, where the government actually helps people develop, like take old farms over, and get people out of cities,
Right.
so as long as they help, local populations by only buying local food, employing locally, etc., they get, very low loans. And they're also able to develop agricultural, areas, which is really what Costa Rica needs, just because, we're kind of just sticking to the same areas, Arenal, Monteverde, is kind of developing, and then there really isn't anything in the mountainous areas.
Yeah, and we're running the risk of over tourism in a lot of these places.
Yeah.
Related to all that, do you get any concern or sense that locals might be starting to resent this influx of foreign investment?
I don't get it, Case. I think everyone's doing well. I mean, there is a strong middle class in Costa Rica. And I think in countries where, you see this poor and you see this rich, you just see that. I mean, you're seeing it in politics in Latin America at the moment.
Sure.
You're seeing these huge left wing, governments, which really is just a lot of, lower, like poor people basically voting them in because they need hope.
Right.
Whereas here in Costa Rica is that like I pay my guys well. I know you pay your guys well. If like everybody gets paid really well, okay, it's not the cheapest country to live in, but like it doesn't need to be expensive here if you don't want it to be either. Like, my electricity bill a month is what, like less than $100. My internet is like $50 a month. Like the cost of living really isn't that expensive. What's expensive is food. But it just depends what you eat. I mean, if you're eating a very local diet, it's not that expensive. It's when you get into more exotic stuff that it gets expensive. But
what if I sell my family plot at the beach? How would I stay there at this point?
I mean, you're just either moving to another destination or you're moving further out, really, Case. I mean,
Yeah.
Look, I mean, if your family has a piece of land at the beach and you really don't, you've got two options. Well, you've got three options. Number one, don't do anything. Number two, go for a joint venture with someone, which I know a lot of people have done. Or sell it and take it, take the cash while you can, because the worst thing you want to happen, Case, especially for someone that's a little bit elder, is for that to go to your kids. And I say that from the point of view of just gone through a negotiation, of a year and a half on a piece of land, which we actually closed today.
Yeah.
So it's just that, like, it's so much infighting and getting people to agree, like, just get rid of it before, unfortunately, before you die, so that your kids don't fall out, because that's what ends up happening. But
when you mention a joint venture, so obviously we know plenty of locals who are land rich and cash poor. How do you cash out at the top as opposed to, we see some hilarious signs in neighborhoods now where somebody wants an absurd price that they'll never get for their land. But how would you structure a deal if you were advising a local? Like, let's get you max dollar out of this, but let's also do it in a way that you have a chance of selling it in this lifetime.
yeah, I mean, I think it's just managing expectations, like kind of, what's being sold in the area to just get a rough idea. And, that's pretty crazy because there is no MLS here. But usually I can find, through contacts and stuff, an idea, or just looking, parcel. I can look at Siri, which is like a government website where I can see all the parcels, take a look and see if anything's traded, hands in a while. But my thing here really is like, what do you want? What are you going to do with the money? Because buyers don't, depending on where it is, things don't just sell like, hotcakes here in some areas. I mean, okay, if it's in a beach location, probably does, but it depends which location it's in. But like, just don't be too greedy. Because if you want to wait, you're going to miss it. You will miss it. Like if you want to wait, you'll miss it, and then you'll be getting cents on the dollar. So,
Well,
and
earlier the winners and losers. The losers are going to be the people that miss the wave.
yeah, you know, it's either that or wait 10 years for the next wave,
Right.
if you want to. But like if your family or you really need the cash, you've got two choices. You can even finance the deal if you want to for a buyer, which means that then instead of getting the whole lump sum, which for some people actually might be healthier case, that aren't, financially, disciplined. Yeah, or okay, I'll take 50% and the other 50%, I'll take it 7.5%, or it can be a variable rate over a period of time. So I know I've got that money coming in, and you can either have balloon payments at the end of every year. Like there are different ways to do this. And to be honest with you, that's probably a better way rather than like just getting all this cash at once. Because then you're like, I got this cash. What do I do with it?
Sure.
Sure.
I mean,
or if you're going to do it, if
ahead.
you're going to do a joint venture, just be like, look, I have the land, you have the cash to come in and basically build something, and just structure it as a business deal with, ownership.
Exchange a portion for equity in the future thing.
Yeah, well, take some cash off the table and keep some equity as well. I mean, it really depends, what it is that you want, how old you are, what your risk profile is like, etc. Because look, let's take you'd said there between locals. Let's take Nyada, which is a really well-known brand. That was a, local farmer, his family, that land, and they did a joint deal with the guys that built Nyada, and they're still involved in it.
Yeah, but that turned out pretty good for them. Huh?
Yeah, I mean it did, and there are other circumstances, whether that's happened, but not everybody wants to be in those types of partnerships, because partnership is difficult as well.
I hear you. I was always a pain in your butt.
And
seeing as how still are.
I was always a pain in yours. We were both a pain in each other's butts. Cancelled each other out.
Seeing as how you Brits love your colonies, if you were king of Costa Rica, God help us, how might you change, create, or eliminate some laws that you think would ensure the long-term sustainable development of the country?
I had Juan Carlos Hidalgo. Did I get the last name right? Juan Carlos Hidalgo is the president of BUSC and a good friend of ours, Case. He was on a while back saying that making Costa Rica more of a free trade zone, more different areas, which I thought was really smart. I just feel that we're doing it here in the city and not in other areas that really needs it, So I'd probably create free trade zones in certain areas, especially when it comes to tourism, though, Case, as well. Free trade zone for tourism, because they're building these areas in like commercial areas, but like a hotel can't be really built in a commercial. I mean, it could be, but like they're not being built in free trade zones. So when you've got areas like Golfito or Limon, or these areas that are like, okay, let me find the areas in, rural areas, that have high unemployment, that need help. Like, again, create free trade zones, incentives for people to actually be able to go out and develop something in those areas, rather than waiting for typically a foreigner with money to come in, fall in love with the area, which is 1 in a million, and then develop something there. But that person's probably going to take arrows to begin with. So you need to create the ability for multiple people to do it at the same time, so that like the tide rises, and all those boats rise.
The old public-private partnership. Without giving away the farm, is there a particular rural area that you think is ripe for a new dot on the tourism trail?
Wow. It's something on the way to somewhere, Case. I mean, I always said to the guys that this is probably somewhere around like the Santa Cruz area, up in the mountains around Tamarindo Diria, Case. There's highland areas. It's not too far away. I mean, when the Saragobias did Rio Perdido, I was like, you guys are crazy in Bagaces, But then I went there and I was like, oh, wait, I completely get it. This is perfect. Like, it's an hour and 20 minutes from the airport. It feels like I'm at the hour now without being there. And then from there, I can be at the beach in, 2 hours. So, I kind of feel that anything that's, if you drew a circle within 2 hours of Liberia, I think that would really work. And really, the thing with doing anything around the areas of San Jose is just getting anywhere. Like, there's southern areas of like, I love the highlands, the Dota, Santa Maria de Dota, Perez Elon, all those areas are just beautiful. Just getting there is a pain, and you can't fly there really. And so it's just not really on the way to anything. I mean, it kind of is if you want to go to Avito or the South, but that case, but I'd maybe find a way to do something like Jim Tamales did in Santa Juana, like something up there in the mountains, maybe above Estorrillos in Portalón, or somewhere in those central Pacific areas, in the mountains a little bit.
Yeah.
An El Silencio Lodge or something like that, but like in the central Pacific area somewhere, so that I can combine it with the beach.
It's going to be fascinating. It seems inevitable that one or more of these regional landing strips is going to go international at some point, right?
Well, I mean, they've been trying case in, I think it's, what is it, in Panama Norte or somewhere down there, Sierpe area. There was a big buzz a while back about like the president's been down there. It's going. We're getting an international airport in the south. And I'm like, guys, it's one of the most protected areas in the planet. Getting jets in and out with the wildlife, like I don't know what that's going to look like. You're going to have the activists, down there for sure. And this country just moves so slowly. I mean, it took 40 years to do the 27 case.
But wouldn't you think that perhaps at some point the Capos airport could happen, or the Malpais airport could get international flights? Only saying that then if these beach towns, if more and more tourism like Guanacaste Liberia tourism becomes, I arrive straight to destination, then theoretically their second destination, their other R&all, their other mountain place could end up being closer to these places as you're describing. So for each of these beach destinations that becomes a fly in, fly out, you need a second place to go, which is why, in what seemed crazy initially, Rio Perdido now seems inevitable, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna, Leo from NIDA and I talked about this a while back, because he tried to get, the Aranao airstrip to be an international airstrip and get everything there. He was like, we'll pay for it. But
right.
I think it goes down to this and it was clear during the pandemic, of the government's charter is not to develop tourism in Costa Rica. It's been very organic to today, right?
Sure.
Like, meaning it's not their number one priority. No. It might not even probably be their top 5 case, to be honest with you.
They don't talk about it much.
Even though, it's probably a huge percentage of GDP. I mean, I think, what was it? We were saying 13% directly, 29% indirectly, or something like that during the pandemic.
Nearly half outside of the Central Valley.
So that's huge. And they just don't talk about it. And I think that until politicians' case are in tourism, meaning they own tourism assets, I don't know whether we're going to get like the push that we need. Because it's kind of just seen as like a foreigner thing, if that makes sense. Meaning to date, it's been foreigners coming in. The national, the first national park, I think, was done by was it a Dutch or Danish person?
Yeah, or they think now there's so much momentum, it's unstoppable, that it's going to happen regardless, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it gets done in a very controlled fashion. It's very organic. I mean, like the government's not controlling it; it's just very organic. And that's Costa Rica. It's just everything's organic. I mean, I always say that Costa Rica woke up one day and was like, wow, we've got penicillin, like we've got this amazing, landscape and brand. And yes, they have developed it, but it was all these decisions that were made, 60, 70 years ago that just really made this country the amazing place it is.
And a little bit of luck.
Yeah, I mean, tons of luck.
Bold prediction time. What do you think is going to happen, Costa Rica real estate, Costa Rica tourism in general over the next 24 months? What do you see is happening next?
We're definitely going to see a softening in the market case. I mean, I spoke to some realtors and they were like, look, this year, what was it? July this year to July last year, 50% down, on inquiries. But that's inquiries, not buyers. But I think there probably are 50% down on buyers, so I think we're going to see a softening on prices. I think we'll probably start to see some price reductions in some of the, I would say, some of the asset classes and locations that aren't the main locations. And the reason that being is just because I think people that couldn't afford the main locations went further out, and maybe they stretched themselves a little bit, took a HELOC loan, maybe it was variable, and so if they need to, if interest rates continue to rise, they might feel the pinch on that one and try and get out of it. So, I'm excited, Case, because I didn't do that much buying and selling during the past 2 years. I mean, I bought and sold a few things, but nothing major. I didn't go crazy like some other people did. But I just bought stuff that I was like, look, I think over the next, if I had to hold it for 5 years or even 10 years, I'd be happy with that. And that's always my saying. Like, would I be happy with holding this for 5 or 10 years?
Mhm.
You know, did I get the price? So I think real estate's going to kind of soften up. Tourism, I think it's going to still continue to be strong. I think we're seeing a return to seasonality, like pre-pandemic seasonality of ups and downs. I just think that the watermark now is higher than it was before, and I think we'll continue to do that. So I think we'll continue to see here, Case, as long as flight prices don't go crazy. You know, Costa Rica continue to just do well. Organic growth, you know, 3-5% every single year. I don't think we're going to see this huge jump, you know, like we did from 2019 to 2022. You know, average daily rates probably will continue to rise, but we've got some big hotels coming online as well, Case. So I think Costa Rica is going to get a type of clientele that maybe it hasn't had before as well, which is going to be more the Hawaii, you know, type, more the high-end Mexico. You know, so I think it's in a great place. I really do. You know, and as a country, you know, I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of people relocating and wanting to make this home, Case. You know, I continue to see it, and I think a lot more people will. You know, we have a great balance of life here.
It's going to be fascinating. I mean, one would suppose that the U.S. election is going to be gnarly, and you just got to wonder how many more people that might send abroad.
I mean, every election's gnarly in every country now, though, right?
They just seem to keep getting crazier. I mean, I don't know how many people follow Latin politics, but now we're into assassinations in Ecuador. Do you foresee any consolidation, any bankruptcies, any big failures? I mean, what do you think is the worst case scenario?
Probably a few developments, Case, you know, kind of more the hobby style developers that, you know, bought a piece of land and started subdividing it and was like, look, I'm going to be out of this in 2 or 3 years. When I'm like, guys, you need to understand here in Costa Rica, you better be ready for like, you know, 10 to 20 years to develop something here,
Right.
even if it's a subdivision with 30, 40 lots.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're going to start to see some of that, Case.
When we talk about large developments in Costa Rica, like what someone envisions in the US, trying to think of a random one off the top of my head, but I'm struggling right now. When you think of a big gated community with a hotel and a golf course and condos in Costa Rica, that's almost one hand. No, I mean, is there anything new-ish?
Well, I mean, you've got kind of, I mean, not that you could call the Discovery Project or Zapotao, you know, those ones over there, Zapotao is, but they're kind of really closed gate, really. So it's not kind of open to the public. I mean, newish kind of orientated stuff.
Would you put Mystico in that class?
Yeah, but they've been around for a while, though, Case. I mean, it's a lot of it's all pre-pandemic stuff. You know, I'm trying to think what stuff we've got kind of post-pandemic that's really kind of come out, you know, during that period of time. Yeah, there's not really anything that really jumps out to me. I'm sure people are screaming at the moment, dude, what about this one? You know,
Right.
But a lot of stuff, you know, people said pandemic saved a lot of the developments here,
Oof.
like Pico and Mar Vista, you know, all these ones around Coco and Playa Hermosa and,
Right.
you know, Sana and Santa Teresa and, you know, etc. So, you know, things were just chugging along slowly. And then, you know, the pandemic kind of when it was released, everybody just came down here and was like, sod it, I'm going to buy a place in Costa Rica.
Is there anything sizable in down south now, meaning Dominical or Hochal, any serious project?
Yeah, well, look, Ventanas del Pacifico, which has been down there for probably about 25 years-ish, a French-Canadian woman came in and just bought the whole ridgeline, Case and developed that. You know, she's been developing it over a long period of time. And I had to take my hat off to her because, I mean, it's, what is it, 12 or 13 phases, like subdivisions. Like, it's just like, and I'm like, wow, I mean, put roads in, put water in, put electricity in. It's just a lot of money.
Yeah.
And even they're only like half sold and half built, you know. So, I mean, there's still a lot of runway in Costa Rica. There's the San Buenas golf course community down there as well, which, you know, has about 70 lots in it, you know, where they want to sell it. I was scratching my head about that one going, that would be interesting to take over, you know, with a golf course, put a hotel on it, and then develop it there because it's already got its condo permits. It's got all the infrastructure in place. You know, so, but I mean, I think that's it in the, you know, central southern areas. It's just, to develop is difficult, man. You know, and especially with those ridge lines in those, especially those southern areas. You know, a lot of people have tried in Pavone's case. It's just that, you know, it's a mess in a lot of these areas, man. I mean, it's, you know, yeah, I mean, you know, there's just a lot of bodies buried everywhere.
Literally, as well as legally.
Probably. I mean, that's the beauty of this country, man. I mean, it's, you know, yeah.
If you had to pick a second or third tier beach destination, which do you think is ripe to really pop next?
I think Grande already has, because that was my one
Yeah,
pre-pandemic.
yeah.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, where can you go that the getting's still good?
Um, God, I'm just scanning the whole country.
I
You
know
know,
it's tough, right?
look, I think that area, Junquial, Marbella, San Juanillo, I think that between Nosara and kind of Tamarindo area, I think that coastline will probably be next to Pop
It's
Case.
pretty
It's
aw-
just
it's pretty awesome.
good asphalt roads, good infrastructure,
Is
and
the
close.
is the water a little better over there? The water
Yeah, much
situation?
better, much
Yeah.
much better. They have really good water and good water infrastructure there. You know, I
I mean,
mean,
isn't that the first thing you tell customers, right? Like
water.
check,
Everything comes down to water. Yeah.
especially in the northern beaches, right?
Yeah, and I mean, you can't drill for wells still. Like, if you were like, "Hey, I want to do a perforated well and do a development off it," it's like, no, dude. Like, you can't get well drilling permits at the moment. You can dig an artisanal well, but like, you can't drill a perforated well.
And can you imagine how many people have land they can't get water to?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks. I had a piece of land that had water on it, but there was no water association, so I dug a well.
And
And that's
how long did that take?
like 2 days. I mean, they just did it in 2 days.
No, but I mean for you to get the permits to do that.
Oh, you don't need a permit for it now,
Oh,
Case.
really?
No, the president last year came out and said, "Hey, if anyone wants to dig an artisanal well to build a residential home, you can do. You just need a hydrologist to basically sign off on a bit of paper saying it has a certain flow rate, and you're good to go."
Sweet.
You know, every canton, like every county, is different in Costa Rica. You know, so we speak to just the every county's local engineer, who's the one approving all the building permits, just to make sure, is because everyone's different. Case like in Osa, when you've got a concession on a river in process, they'll give you a building permit. Whereas in Quepos, they won't do that. And in Guanacaste, they won't do that. Like, there are just certain areas that are a little bit more flexible than others.
Right. What's the first piece of advice you give everybody besides don't do it?
Don't do it. No, I mean, really what I just, for them, it's just understanding of why they're doing it. And it's good for me to understand of why they're doing it. Like, is this lifestyle? Is this investment? Is it a mix of both? Which one takes, the priority? Just because that's really going to determine, what you end up doing.
And does that question throw them sometimes? They're like, well, I didn't think of that.
Well, I think it does. A lot of people are like, "Wow, you're like a life coach, Rich." When it comes to this stuff, because I'm like, "Why are you doing this? What's important to you? What's your daily routine? Which people do you like to be alike?" Because what I'm trying to do is narrow down the areas for them of where I'm like, "Look, Tamarindo ain't your place because it's probably it's a little too touristy and what would be the word, like strict. Whereas if you're a little bit more hippie and want to be a little bit more present and in the jungle, maybe the southern zone is a little bit more for you. Just trying to get to know people and like, just don't rush. Case it's like, don't rush into anything, and just don't believe the hype. Don't get FOMO. Basically, like, there's tons of land here. There's like tons of opportunity. Like, the next opportunity will come around the corner.
Have you found that there are certain US cities or regions that sync with Costa Rican regions or don't sync?
Yeah, I mean, look, Californian people do just love, the Southern Pacific area. I usually find, Floridians, kind of Texans like the Northern Guanacaste, the Los Sueños kind of, areas, people from New York, the Northeast area. They also like the Guanacaste area and Los Sueños area as well. It's just certain types of, there's certain types of people, likes different areas. And yeah, I mean, it's you definitely start to see a certain type of person when you walk around a place. And clients have been like, wow, the contrast between Flamingo, where there's a marina and people walking around in like, flip-flops and shorts and fishing tops and those kind of stuff, to, Vita, where people are like barefoot and like it's a little bit more, hippie and but
it's fascinating, right? It's fascinating how climate and landscape and certainly architecture attract a different person.
Well, but it's also just like in that southern, like central southern area, they just have, it's so fertile that, anything you put in the ground, whereas typically, I was talking about this with a client where, in some areas of the world, you get one harvest. I mean, sometimes in the year we get 2 or 3 harvests. I mean, my avocado tree is going again. Like, we've already had one harvest this year. I'm going again, for another harvest. So I'm like, typically you don't get that in most in most of the world.
Right.
And there's nothing better than growing your own fruit and veg and going to pick it.
Yeah, it's funny. There seems to be this post-pandemic, this compulsion to reconnect with the earth, right?
Yeah.
Well, Rich, I don't want to take any more of your time, man. That was great.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, and always fun chatting.
Awesome. Have a good one.
Let's do it again soon.
Definitely. Ciao.
Let's talk tourism.